And we are recording. And so the topic of today's video is the wrapper div. And you might be asking, what is the wrapper div? And I would answer that by pulling up a website that I go to right now. This is a Yahoo Fantasy Baseball website. You can see that as of Tuesday, I'm losing my matchup, but I am in first place in the league, so I'm feeling pretty good about my Yahoo Fantasy Baseball. But this is a site that I go to, and this is a site like many that have this concept of the wrapper div. In fact, I could pull up another website that I have open on my account, and this has the wrapper div, and I could tell just by looking at it, it has the wrapper div. What is the wrapper div? Well, if you inspect and you kind of go up here into the body, you can even see I've got a div ID of outer wrapper. So underneath the body, I've got this div ID of outer wrapper. And if I kind of get into here, let's see if I can highlight it. There's my nav bar. There's my header. Okay. This is kind of, you can see all the content. If I click on that, you can see all the contents in this section. All the contents really, and you could call it page wrap, but this one right here, you see the blue that's highlighting? And basically, this is where all your content goes inside of the wrapper. And so the body, in a lot of cases, well, the body tag has this kind of background color of gray. And up here, there's a header that's maybe not in the wrapper. But basically, the wrapper is the section of the page where all the content exists. And some things exist outside of the wrapper, and some things exist inside of the wrapper. But you can kind of see, based on what I showed you, that right here, you've got this div class of page wrap. And this one's even, it's not called wrapper, but this class of page is really, this div right here is where all the content contains it to. So a wrapper is a way to kind of center, and it's not that all the text is aligned in the center. So there actually is, like a paragraph tag, and then we could target in our style sheet, we could do a text, and we could do text align center. Okay, this is not a wrapper. All this does is it literally justifies text, like literally in the middle of the page. Okay, a wrapper is different because you're going to notice that this text, if I inspect it, it still goes 100% width of the page. This paragraph does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this wrapper div. I'm going to make this section on my page, and it doesn't have to be a div, you know, but the point is it's going to take the white space, and let's undo this because this is not a wrapper. By default, if you look at all the white spaces over here, and what a wrapper does is it justifies the white space kind of more on the left and the right. It evens out the white space. Okay? So it evens out the white space so you just don't have white space that's currently all on the right-hand side. So the objective is to do that. That's what a wrapper does. A wrapper div justifies the content to be more or less in the center of the page. And this is how it is done. This is very commonly how a wrapper is done. I'm going to do a div ID of wrapper and use my Emmet hotkey. And you might have a heading here. You know, of course, a paragraph with some lorem ipsum. You might have another heading. You might have a main tag with a div ul times 5, right? 5 ULs? No, ul li times 5. The content isn't the critical part here, so I'm just whipping this together. Okay. Again, all of our content is, all our white space is right justified. So to make a wrapper, you notice I've got this is step 1. The markup is to take all of your content and you open the wrapper div right after the opening body, and you close the wrapper div right before the closing body. And so you'll notice that all of my content is inside of this wrapper div. That's not always the case. Like in this case of Yahoo, I noticed that there is a header with some images in it. It's not that everything has to be inside of the wrapper. Like on Yahoo, it wasn't, right? But for the sake of this example, we'll go ahead and put the header inside of the wrapper. Okay, now I've got my external style sheet. So this is all that's required for the markup. And for the CSS, I'm going to target the ID of wrapper, and I'm going to give it some sort of width. Now, in the Yahoo example, it's not a very wide piece of content. It's only 500 pixels wide. Now, if we just look at it right now, you can kind of tell that this wrapper, look at the blue, that's 500 pixels. Okay, so we've changed the width on my wrapper. And you can actually see right over here on my CSS the width of 500 pixels. If I uncheck that, you can kind of see the difference in what that just did. Okay, but the next thing is margin. Remember, margin is moving things around on the page. 0 means 0 margin on the top and the bottom. And then we say auto on the left and right. And so now if I look at this, you could see we've done exactly what I was shooting for. And we've got the content in the middle. Now, again, this is not text align center, which is, again, if I were to do text align center, it would look a little bit differently. I'm not focusing on that right now. It's not text align center. Instead, what we've done is we've taken that white space and we've kind of auto-justified the white space. And we said half of the white space go on the left, half of the white space go on the right. That's what the auto keyword does. It says, okay, how much space do I have? And basically split that evenly on both sides, on the left and the right. So 0 margin on the top and bottom, auto-justify the left and the right. And then you can change this accordingly, like width of 1500 pixels. Well, now we have a wider wrapper, right? So a lot of pages, like if I go to Inside Rankin, a lot of pages have like 98% viewport width. Now look at that. That's 98% viewport width of the device I'm in. So when I'm looking at Rankin, I don't really see a big wrapper, but I do see a little one, and the wrapper is going to use up. Now what that allows you to do is you could target the body to do some things like background color black maybe, and then the wrapper background color white. You could start doing things like this where you've got a different background, and again, going in the case of Yahoo Fantasy Baseball, like they've got a gray background on the body. They've got a header up here, this header that's outside of the wrapper. Because how do I know that? Because it's basically going 100% width of the page. So it's not in the wrapper. The wrapper, all the content's kind of here in the middle, right? But above that, you've got a header tag that falls outside of the wrapper. And so you might see this where there's a header like that, and then you would just put a background image on this header to get that to go 100% of the page. So now my header that's outside of the wrapper, let me go ahead and target the header tag, background color green, just to show you. a header that's outside of the wrapper. So most of the content will be in the wrapper. Occasionally you've got some tags that are outside of the wrapper. But that's a quick video on wrapper. It is a very common thing that I see on websites. And it's just using some things that you know about HTML, like the div tag with an ID, of wrapper and CSS. This is basically the gist of it. You give it a width, step one. Your wrappers need a width. Give the wrapper a width. And then you have to set the margin to 0 auto. And that's what it takes on the wrapper. I know I covered that quickly. Anybody out there, or anybody got any questions?
For me, is this going to be recorded?
It is recorded.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Quickest recording of all time in my history, 11 minutes.